G'day viewers, over the last few weeks I've popped out a few videos on blurry textures, and we've had some experiments that you guys have taken part in. This is what you found, and perhaps where we go from here. First up, thanks for having a go. So loads of you took part, much more than I thought would, and there was lots of comments coming back on the videos, in the Discord, all over the place really. Really good to see. Obviously people want to get a better understanding, and so we can get it resolved. And first up, a special mention. According to Deep Submicron, I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, that was their comment this morning anyway on the Train Sim World stream. But that's okay. I don't pretend to know everything that is going on, and I'm not an Unreal game developer. I'm just trying to unravel a mystery and get some good information that is relevant across the board, across a wide range of players, wider than maybe DTG can get to by themselves. Righto. Oh yeah, I still love you. It's okay. Now, I'm not going to go through all the individual comments, but there were a lot of people. And we'll get through some points later where I summarize what I think's going on. So I'll just flick through the various comments, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea of just how many people did actually respond on this thing. And I tried grouping them into themes to try and get some idea of what was going on. So now we'll get into the bit where I'm going to do the talking head stuff. So where does this leave us? The core issue. Basically, blurry textures happen because the Unreal Engine texture streaming pool runs out of memory, VRAM. The game is forced to load low-resolution versions even for close-up objects. This is a common consensus. I didn't find anybody that actually disagrees with this at all. So everybody seems to have the general idea that, yep, it's all about texture streaming and the texture pool. Lower VRAM architectures experience the issue more. This is an interesting one because it manifests itself more on Xbox than PlayStation, but in theory they have the same VRAM. All consoles experience it more than PC does. PCs with mid to high specs almost never experience the issue. So I think that just backs up that it is actually a VRAM exhaustion issue around the texture streaming pool. The texture streaming pool in most games, and I have to admit I don't know what TSW sets it to, but in most games the texture streaming pool is set to around half of the VRAM. So that's probably likely that it is set that way. Now, people do say that the in-game settings are ineffective at solving the problem, so multiple users confirm that changing the texture quality setting from high to low does absolutely nothing to fix the train texture blurriness. The game seems to prioritize memory over settings. Using 1080p over 4K screen resolution also does not seem to help, so a lot of people playing at 1080p do actually experience the problem. A fairly common thing was too much resolution and detail. So by default, Unreal textures are usually 4096 by 4096 pixels, or texels, I think the correct description is, and a single texture consumes megabytes of memory. On dashboards and perhaps in the cabins, high resolution is warranted, but 4096 by 4096 is still overkill. Many Unreal developers recommend 2048 by 2048 for detailed areas and 1024 by 1024 for less detailed, e.g. smooth train walls. Lowering the textures reasonably is optimization and can be done without losing any visual acuity in the rendered train when it's done well. So that's one of the things that developers talk about when they're optimizing a game. It's basically they're going through all of the textures that have been used and reducing the resolution in a sensible way. The most vulnerable trains, and this seems to be quite consistent, are the Class 350 variants and the Class 710. The problem seems to be resolved on the 710 though, and it's mostly the 350s. It does happen to other trains, but these ones are where it's most often seen. Now, I do note that this could be biased, is because the UK is represented quite strongly in my channel audience, so there's quite likely to be German trains, because I don't have a lot of German people who watch my channel, and potentially US trains, because while I do have a lot of US viewers, they're not represented as strongly as the UK ones are. The fixing train glitch. Now, this one was actually kind of interesting, because many people reported that the textures clear up for 10 seconds or so, when a high detail AI train passes before degrading again. So this points to a temporary VRAM priority shift. It's interesting that it does that. Others find that switching cameras from inside to outside repeatedly often resolves the issue. Not always, but often. There was a bit of a debate and a bit of a split over whether the DLCs make any difference or not. So one of the experiments I asked for was people to uninstall various DLC. In the first experiment, I got people to just reduce their DLC down to a bare minimum. And in another one, I particularly asked people to pull out the really high quality, high textured DLCs. And again, I'm not picking on any builder or provider here. It's just that some of them are more detailed than others. So many people reported that uninstalling the DLC as requested solved the issue, but an almost equal number, slightly less of you, found it had no impact. So that's quite interesting that it worked for a few people and not others, which does point that it's probably not the issue. Some people found the issue would happen to the Class 350 with only West Coast Mainline South installed. That is particularly interesting. Consistently, people found that disabling layers made no difference at all. Yep, I think that's pretty cut and dried that we do have a texture issue on West Coast Mainline South, potentially with the Class 350, although there's probably other things affected as well. Does stutter give a clue? Now, this one came from one person, David Pearson, and he made an interesting observation that in the same places he encounters blurry textures on consoles, he sees a stutter in the root on PC. Only David reported this, but it's kind of interesting. So I'm curious if anybody else has noticed this same thing if you play across PC and console. And if you do, let me know, please. The workaround trap. A lot of people commented on a desire to have it fixed versus finding a workaround that players deserve what they paid for. So the general theme here was people were concerned that I seemed to be trying to find a workaround for the problem. And while some of the things that were tried do seem to help a bit, yeah, I agree. You should get what you're paying for. Many users are done with DTG and feel the issue lacks priority, especially as they keep churning out more and more DLC rather than fixing blurry textures. This was also mixed in with a whole host of other issues that people are concerned about or upset about. And I actually see that as a valid point, to be honest with you, because, well, I'll get into the timing of when this first started to happen a little bit later on, and we can talk about it then. Always shut down. Many members of the community validated my thinking that issues like this are experienced less by players who always shut down their machine rather than leave the game running in sleep mode. So this is mainly a thing for console players because it's very easy to just drop your console and walk off and they sleep. And when you come back, you can just resume the game where you were. I wouldn't do that on a PC, and I think doing it on a console with its even more limited resources is just waiting for issues to happen. Now, I'm not saying that leaving it in sleep mode causes the issue to happen, but it could contribute when you're dealing with resource exhaustion, which we seem to be here. Timing-wise, this was really interesting. Multiple people narrowed down the timing of when the problem first appeared, and the general consensus is, there were a few outliers, but the general consensus is it first appeared in TSW 3 in 2022 and was corrected immediately with a patch. It reappeared in February-March 2024 with Mildmay and was fixed in April 2024. It reappeared in August 2024 along with the release of the Expert DB BR101. And it became super obvious with the West Coast Mainline and the Class 350 in September 2024. It impacted the Class 710 on Goblin Suffragette, even on PC, and was corrected with a patch to that train in March 2025. With the 350 and the other trains that are less affected, it's been with us ever since then. So it looks like, while it might be a recurring issue, the sort of theming I'm seeing here is there's particular trains that have had issues, which would suggest that they had too many high-resolution textures in the train, and they weren't optimized enough on release, and they got optimized and fixed in a patch. But the August 2024, along with the release of the Expert DB101, that timing was really consistent in people that were talking about it. So that's quite interesting that something around that release changed. It does sort of point that perhaps there is a core issue. The 350 being so vulnerable does also suggest that the 350 itself might have a texture issue where there's too many high-res textures in the train. So maybe it needs some optimization and a bit of a cleanup. So where do we go to from here? Well, I'll take this information back to DTG via the Ambassador channel, probably in the form of this video, to be honest. They can just go and watch it like you do. And in the meantime, make sure you let DTG know what you think, because the Winter Player Survey is out. I'll include this link in the video description as well. So thanks again for taking part in this. It's been very, very interesting exercise. I'm kind of sorry that blurry textures have been around for a while. I know they don't affect me overly much because I mostly play on PC, but I do have my Xbox and I do experience the issue there sometimes. Not as much as some other players do, but admittedly I don't use my Xbox terribly much, so I probably just don't see it. And me not seeing it doesn't mean anything because I don't use it very much. Not for this game anyway. But, well, there we go. Let's see where we end up. Hopefully somewhere good. Alrighty, thanks heaps for taking part, and thanks for watching. As always, we're in this together. Alrighty, have fun, folks. See you later.
We played a game.